We're going to look at the place value of numbers and what those place values actually mean. So before we start, we're going to review our place value chart. So we have hundreds, tens, and ones, and those are whole numbers. And then you have your decimal point and your tenths and your hundreds. So anything behind the decimal point means it's a part of a whole. It's not a whole number yet. That's what a decimal means. And anything in front of the decimal point is a whole number. So if we had the number 555 and 55 hundredths, we're going to look at what those numbers really mean. They're all a 5, but they all hold a different value to them. So in order to make 100 or 5 hundredths, you would need 50 tens or 500 ones. That's because the hundreds category is 10 times larger than the tens, because it would take 50 tens to make 100 or 500, and it would take 500 ones to make 500. So it is 100 times greater than the ones category, and it's 10 times greater than the tens category. So you're increasing by 10 times each time. The same can also be true of decimals. So if you have the hundredths category, I like to think of hundredths as pennies. So in order to get to tenths, I like to think of 10 pennies. So 10 pennies, once you have 10, that means you have a dime. So it is increasing 10 times to go to the tenths. It can also look at your hundredths to the ones. So you have 100 pennies, and once you have 100 pennies, you're in the ones, or you have $1. So you can look at decimals that way too. And in your tenths category, that's your dimes. So if you have 1 dime, you have a tenth. Or if you have 10 dimes or 10 tenths, you would have $1 whole or 1 whole. You can also look at it the other way. So if you are looking at the value, your tenths going from 100ths to tens, so 5 hundredths to 5 tens, you decreased it by 1/10 of the value. It got smaller 10 times. So it's 10 times smaller, or you multiplied by 1/10, because a fraction 1/10 is smaller than a whole. And if you look from your hundreds all the way down to your ones, you got smaller by 100 times, or you multiplied by 1/100th. So it's 100 times smaller, or you multiplied by 1/100th. So looking at your ones to your tenths, it is 10 times smaller, or you multiplied by 1/10. And looking from tenths to hundredths, you either got 10 times smaller, or you multiplied by 1/10. To go from your ones to your hundredths, you either multiplied by 1/100th, or you got 100 times smaller.